You've spelunked into the Matt Cave. Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Matt Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. This week, we've got some more Utah Mammoth talk, some Utah Jazz discussion, a little bit about Real Salt Lake, and more gaming. Yes, we are getting to the time of year where video games will be more and more discussed and talked about on the program because, well, there's not much in the way of sports happening in like 2 weeks. The Jazz season is going to wrap up here in 2 weeks. The Utah Mammoth will be, knock on wood, I don't know if you can hear that, but knock on wood, the Mammoth make the playoffs. But other than that, it's just Real Salt Lake, and that's it. So there will be more video game talk. But as always, thank you all so much for being here. You're awesome. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram, the Matt Cave Podcast. You can find me on YouTube as well, under the same moniker. And as always, please share, like, comment, subscribe, wherever it is, however you listen, helps out the show a ton. And the same challenge as usual, Spelunkers, share this with one person that you think might enjoy the program. But let's dive into things, and let's start with those Mammoth. So the Utah Mammoth were on a road trip this past week. They went to LA, Seattle, and Vancouver for 3 of their last 4 road games of the season. And boy, howdy, do they play really well on the road recently. In their last 5 road games, so ever since they were shut out against Minnesota way back on March 10th, they've rattled off 5 straight victories on the road against teams that are either in the playoffs currently or are in the playoff hunt, sans Vancouver. So at Dallas, they won 6-3. At Vegas, they won 4-0, which helped prompt Vegas to fire their head coach. And since Vegas fired their head coach, they've been playing a full game of hockey for the first time all season in their last couple of wins. So Vegas has turned into a team that's a fraud into something that might be more. And then the game against Los Angeles, 6-2. The game against Seattle, 6-2. And the game against Vancouver, 7-4. The offense is not the problem here recently. Even in their loss against Washington, they scored 4 goals. Their loss against Pittsburgh, they scored 3. So the offense is still there. It's just the defense has been very leaky, and the goaltending has not been up to snuff. So that's something to look for as we move closer and closer to hopefully locking in a playoff spot. Looking at the standings, Utah is currently sitting at 86 points, which puts them in that wild card 1 position. And as of me recording this on Sunday, April 5th, happy Easter, the Mammoth would be slated to face off against the Oilers in the first round. Oh boy. I was really hoping Anaheim wouldn't collapse, because that would be 2 teams that pretty much mirror each other in Utah and Anaheim, because they're both young teams on the up and coming and not terribly too much playoff experience. There are players on the team that have playoff experience and have won cups on both sides, but the key pieces, the key core guys on both sides have no playoff experience, like Clayton Keller, Logan Cooley, Cutter Gauthier, Leo Carlson. Those last 2 were for the Ducks, in case you wanted to know that. And that playoff series would just be fun, because it would be a bunch of guys that just don't know any better and be going at each other. Whereas with the Oilers, you're facing off against a team that has gone to back-to-back Stanley Cup finals and lost in 6 and 7 games, respectively. So the experience is there. A cool note about the Oilers, though, is Connor Ingram, the former Utah Hockey Club starting goalkeeper, is the starting goalie for the Oilers during their current run. They did lose recently to Vegas at home, but they went on a run. When they beat Utah, they started to go on a run there, and they find themselves in first in the Pacific, in the pillow fight division. So with the Mammoth, the offense is a lot of fun. The guys are mostly healthy when it comes to the offensive side of things. Logan Cooley is back up to speed after his long-term injury there. And even Alexander Kerfoot is back up to speed after missing a bunch of time this year. And then the usual suspects, Dylan Gunther is almost at 40 goals for the year, which is a big deal in case you don't know. 40 goals is a lot of goals. That means you're basically scoring a goal in half of your games. And then Clayton Keller is just doing fantastically again this season. He's my favorite player on the team for a reason. And right now, he is sitting at 78 points. I predicted 100 points for him before the season. There's 6 games left. He would have to score 2 points in each game. Not saying it's impossible because he scored 4 points against the Canucks here, but it's not very probable. It's possible, but not probable. But if there is a guy on the team that can get to 100 points, it's Kells. Dylan Guenther, like I said, 38 goals. Even Logan Cooley. If Logan Cooley was healthy all season, I think Utah would be up near Minnesota. I really do believe that. I wouldn't say they'd have as many points as Minnesota, but they would have wild card 1 locked down. They would almost have that X next to their name, meaning that they have a playoff spot clinched. I really do believe that if Logan Cooley was healthy all year. He's been scoring goals like crazy. He's missed half of the season, and just to give you an idea, he's only played 48 games this year, okay? Somebody like Nick Schmaltz, for example, has played every game this year, so 76 games. Nick Schmaltz has 28 goals in that time. It helped secure the bag for him, that 8-year, $80 million deal. Logan Cooley has only 6 goals less than Nick Schmaltz in 28 less games played. So in those 28 games, he would be up near Dylan Guenther for the team lead. I'd put him at 35, 36 goals. That's 13 to 14 more goals. That's the difference in a lot of games. So next season could be a very special year here in Utah if everybody could stay healthy. But Logan Cooley's back up to speed. JJ Peterka finally scored a goal again, but his defense has actually been the story this year. JJ Peterka has been a lot better with his back checking, his reading of the defenseman crashing down, or pinching down, as they say, and he's not been a liability like he was early on in the year on the defensive side of things. That's something that gets missed when people that are like stat sheet box score watching and not actually watching the games, that I've been very impressed with JJ Peterka. And it's a portion of the game that Josh Doan over in Buffalo is still kind of struggling with, whereas JJ Peterka has upped that part of his game, and he's still a threat to score. It's just he needs to find the right line, and Andre Turgeon has done a very poor job of finding a line for JJ Peterka to excel offensively in. So this team's awesome. I'm very excited for what's to come. Jack McBain and Barrett Hayton are out week to week with different injuries. Barrett Hayton got hurt in a friendly fire incident where Jack McBain checked Barrett Hayton instead of Connor McDavid in the Oilers game a couple weeks ago. And so Hayton's been hurt ever since. Jack McBain blocked a shot against against Seattle off of his knee on the not padded portion. And it was like a 90-something mile-an-hour slap shot that he took. So he's going to miss some time with a contusion. I don't blame him. He's also had some sort of injury to his face after a fight because he's had that fishbowl mask on the last week or so. And so it probably just it's a lot of stuff. And they're just saying, all right, just rest for a little bit here, heal up. We're going to need you down the stretch. So those guys are out for a little bit. Mackenzie Weegar missed the game against Vancouver. I think that was more precautionary than anything. You didn't really need your full cadre of players against a team like Vancouver, and Utah didn't. And so they just were like, all right, you've got that little injury that's bugging you. We're going to sit you here. We have some extra time off before the next Oilers game, so we want to get you as right as possible. So I don't think anything is terribly or overtly worrying on the team when it comes to injuries. The defense is lacking right now. That first goal against Vancouver, unacceptable. They just let the guy skate straight into the slot, and he just flung a backhander. And yeah, you do want your goalkeeper to save that, but you want your defenders to not allow that to happen. So guys like Sergachev and Durzi, Ian Cole, all of those guys need to step up their game defensively. Offensively, they're fine. I mean, Mikhail Sergachev has 6 points in his last 3 games. So he's just fine on the offensive side of things. This team is awesome. Super fun to watch. If you haven't been able to catch a game, I encourage you to do so, whether that is through SCG Plus, Utah 16 on your television set, Or if you're able to afford to be able to go to one live, I highly encourage that. I went to a few games last year. It was electric then. I can only imagine what it's like in the arena now. So I love this team. I can't wait for what's to come down the road, but I'm also excited for the run-in for the rest of this season. But this team is awesome. I really do enjoy this team. Now let's talk about a team I don't enjoy, the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz have lost 8 in a row because, they're the Jazz. And when we look at the league standings here, oh boy. The Jazz have the 4th worst record, tied with the Sacramento Kings for the worst record in the Western Conference. They are 3 games, I guess, behind if you want to say they're chasing that, top 3 guaranteed percentage garbage that they say is the thing in the lottery, where the lottery is rigged anyway and they just pick who they want to have the top pick because the NBA is crooked. And anyway, they're 3 games behind or ahead, however you want to channel that energy, of Indiana and Brooklyn, and then 4 games for Washington. There's 4 games left to play. Utah would have to lose all 4 games. Washington would have to win all 4 games. And Indiana and Brooklyn would have to win 3 of 4. That's not happening. So Utah is either going to have the 4th or 5th best chance, if you want to call it that, to get a top overall pick. But again, I've been saying this since last season's, air quotes, lottery. The NBA is not going to allow the Jazz to have a top 3 pick. They're just not. Period. End of story. Move on. That's just the reality of it. And I've been warning you guys and preparing you guys for what's going to happen when this lottery, air quotes, happens, so that nobody gets surprised. And you all can just say, yeah, we knew. Just get ready for that. The Jazz are going to have like the 5th, 6th, 7th pick. If there's a way for the NBA to rig it to get this pick sent to Oklahoma City, they're going to do it. So just be aware, because for whatever reason, the Jazz are the scapegoat for tanking, when it should be Philadelphia for the process, San Antonio and their tanking sessions for 2.5 seasons to get Victor Wembanyama. You can have the Brooklyn Nets investigated for basically their entire existence since they moved to Brooklyn about tanking. The Washington Wizards, ditto. I don't care that they traded for Trae Young and Anthony Davis. They're still tanking. The team is still bad. I mean, it's ridiculous that the Jazz are the scapegoats. It's ridiculous. But the reason why is because they're a small market. And remember, Indiana and Utah were both fined. Utah was fined $500,000. Indiana was fined $250,000, $250,000 for tanking. Whereas you could look at Bobby Marks and say, hey, you were assistant GM when your team was terrible and you were terrible on purpose. Anyway, I'm beating an old drum there. So that's just an update on the Jazz and what they are currently looking at when it comes to everything else. Their final 4 games of the season are against Oklahoma City, New Orleans, Memphis, and Los Angeles. I would say 3 of those 4 are guaranteed losses. They're at Oklahoma City, they're at New Orleans, and they're at the Lakers. And then they are at home against Memphis. So that Memphis game is probably going to be a win. And what's really funny here is when you look at the schedule on ESPN.com, you could see ticket prices for these games. And against the Thunder and the Lakers, 2 teams that are in the playoffs, the Thunder are fighting for the top overall seed in the Western Conference with San Antonio. Los Angeles is not terribly too far behind. Those 2 games, $52 is the lowest ticket for the Thunder, and $66 is the cheapest for the Lakers at Crypto Arena. for the games against New Orleans and Memphis. So the game in New Orleans, you could get a ticket for as cheap as $13. That's a Big Mac meal at McDonald's. So for the equivalent, I would rather have the Big Mac meal personally than paying to go see the Pelicans and the Jazz attempt to play basketball. And then the home game, the season finale at home. This is the final home game for the Utah Jazz against Memphis. You could get a ticket for $10. That is a Subway 6-inch sandwich and a large drink. Give me the Subway sub and the drink. I ain't going to that. So you can kind of see that even the fans are like, yeah, this is garbage. We're not going to go watch this. I find that hilarious. Oh, man. And so when you look at it, so for the games against Memphis and New Orleans are both eliminated from postseason contention. Memphis has shut down Ja Morant suspiciously, and New Orleans is just bad. They're not tanking. Like, New Orleans isn't tanking. They're just bad. They were built poorly. They were built around a player that they were hoping was going to be a superstar. All indications when he was coming out of Duke in Zion Williamson was that he was going to be one. But then off the court stuff happened. It wasn't terrible off the court stuff. It wasn't like drugs or nightclub stuff. It was something else. Work ethic. And so they're also eliminated from contention, and they are currently in a hodgepodge with Memphis and Dallas about positioning for a draft pick there. So they could be trying to lose as well, just not as bad as Utah's trying to lose. I wouldn't be surprised to see an entire roster's worth of 10-day contracts on the floor at one time for Utah. That would not shock me. So that's why I'm thinking Utah is going to win maybe one of their last four, potentially all four. If they do lose all four, and let's look at Indiana's schedule here for just a quick peek. Just a quick peek. Indiana plays against Cleveland, one of the best teams in the East. By the way, tickets for that one, $9. Their last 5 games, excuse me. So it's Cleveland today, as I'm recording this, against the Cavaliers. And then they play against Minnesota at home. That's a loss. But then they play Brooklyn and Philadelphia. Those two could be wins for the Pacers. In their last 6 games, they're 500. They beat Orlando, Miami, and Chicago. And then they almost beat the Clippers and the Lakers. So Indiana's not giving up by any stretch of the imagination. They're just not very good without Tyrese Halliburton, which is fair to say. And then they end the season against Detroit, who is the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference for the first time since they won the NBA Finals in 07-08 with Ben Wallace, Chauncey Billups, what was his name? Tyshawn Prince, I think was what his name was. Richard Hamilton. Rip Hamilton was on that team. Yeah, that was a weird team to win the NBA Finals over the Kobe, Shaq, Karl Malone, Gary Payton Lakers. In 5 games, no less. Wild. So Detroit's the number 1 seed. I don't know if they have much to play for in that final game. So Indiana could sneak a win there. So if Utah loses out, there is a chance, not very great, but there is a chance they could sneak in to get those equal odds of the 3 worst teams. Again, it's possible. It's not very plausible, but it's possible. So something to look out for there. And if you want, we could let's take a peek. Let's take a peek at Brooklyn's schedule. So the Fighting Jaeger Demons, in case you didn't know, let's see, against Washington. That's a key game for the tank off. Today, Brooklyn and Washington play. And for some reason, the tickets for this game are $25. Maybe because it's in New York. But $25 to watch Washington and Brooklyn. Are you kidding me? Ugh, gross. Then they play against Milwaukee, the Giannis-less Milwaukee Bucks, again, and then against Indiana. So there's a couple of huge games for Jazz fans to look at when it comes to the tank-off. Because ideally, what you want to have happen here is you want Brooklyn to beat Washington. The game against Indiana is 6s either way, so one team has to win that game. But then Brooklyn is against Milwaukee twice and then Toronto. Brooklyn could win those games against Milwaukee. They're not going to beat Toronto, but they could. They could. So there is a story here to look at. If you're a Jazz fan and you're tired of watching your team suck, there's something here for you to look at when it comes to the rest of the NBA. So there is still a story. Utah could sneak in to getting those equal odds for the first overall pick, which we all know is bunk, but it's still possible. So I found something interesting for Jazz fans here to look at, and something that's hilarious to me. So there you go. There's your Jazz update for the week. And now let's move on to Real Salt Lake. Don't look now. Real Salt Lake is in 4th place in the Western Conference. I know. It's crazy. They are tied, by the way, with Nashville in the Eastern Conference for the fourth best record in MLS. They are 4-1-1 to start the season. If they were in the Eastern Conference, they'd be tied for first. I'm enjoying this right. I'm just enjoying this right now. Do I think this is going to last? It's possible. It's not very plausible. One of my favorite things to say, by the way. You're going to hear me say that a lot. It's possible. It's just not plausible. It's awesome. Diego Luna scored his first goal of the season on a beautiful shot. Now, and I also want to temper expectations here. Sporting Kansas City is by far and away the worst team in MLS. I know Philadelphia doesn't have a single win on the season, and they have a -7 goal differential. But if you look at Sporting Kansas City, the team is just bad. They're slow. They're clunky. I just don't... It's wild that they have 4 points. I don't know how they managed to get a win this year. But Real Salt Lake, fourth in the Western Conference, guys. 2 points behind second place and only 3 points back from league leaders Los Angeles FC, who haven't lost a game yet this year. Outstanding stuff from the Claret and Cobalt. I love it. If you look at the goal scorers too, obviously it can't be the Diego Luna show. He had to miss the first few games of the season. But we've got a couple of multi-goal scorers on the team. Sergei Solans, Xavier Gozo, and Hayden Hezarkhani all have multiple goals this year. Sergei Solans leads the team in goals with 3. So it's not just the Diego Luna show to start things out. And I also want to point this out. They play the Pablo Mascheroni way. And it's so much fun to watch. It's flipping the field. If you don't know that term, if you don't remember me describing it from last season, you flip the field. And so let's say the ball is at the right back, and he's bringing it up on the right sideline or touch line for all of you footballers out there. And he launches it across the field diagonally to the left winger up on the other side of the field. And he doesn't launch to where the player is. He launches it to where the player is going. So he kicks it into space is what they call it, where there's no players. And you're counting on your guy to either win the race to the ball or putting enough pressure on the defender, who usually doesn't like to have the ball at their feet, to win the ball back and then be able to hold up play for the rest of the team to come up and allow, somebody like Diego Luna some space to work some magic. That's the Pablo Mascheroni system, and they're playing it very well to start the season. It's awesome. It really is. And their defense is getting better with each game. The game again, obviously it's Sporting Kansas City, so I need to pump my brakes here a little bit. But they're getting their assignments more correct when it comes to set pieces. There's not as many breakdowns when it comes to that, and they're not allowing their center backs to get split as often as they did last year. If you allow your 2 center backs to get split by a hard-charging attacker, you're doomed. You're just doomed. And last season, that happened a lot. This season, not as much. So they're getting better. And it's very interesting to see because you all heard me. I thought it was going to be doom and gloom this year for Real Salt Lake. Turns out, it's one of these times where I'm very happy to eat crow. For now. We'll see what happens as the season goes along. But for now, Real Salt Lake is... Not only are they in the top 4 in the Western Conference, but it's a fun brand of soccer to watch. It really is. So, if you can get Apple TV, I'm not encouraging you to do so. I want MLS to eat this stupid decision and not ever do it again. So please don't get an Apple TV subscription. But if you already have one, whether it's like through your phone carrier, I know there's some cable packages out there that have it as well. Turn on a Real Salt Lake game. You're going to watch some fun football there. All right, so that's it for the sports talk. I know spring ball just happened for BYU and Utah. BYU, the way they wrap up, or they have the past couple of seasons, their spring balls, they do an alumni game, which is pretty cool. They don't do a blue and white scrimmage. They do that in the fall camp to break fall camp, which I think is better than what they did in the past, where they had a pseudo blue and white game, but it wasn't really a full-on blue and white game. So this one celebrates the past years of BYU football, bringing back legends like Steve Young. Jim McMahon has come to one. Austin Collie, Max Hall, guys like that. Tyler Algier. He was there. He didn't play, obviously, because he's still in the NFL. But he was there. Fred Warner, Kyle Van Noy. So all those guys did come back. A lot of them didn't play for obvious reasons, but they did come back. And that's really smart by not just Kalani Sitake in the program, but by the recruiting team as well. Because you get those guys who used to play at BYU to come back, and it shows that they still like the where they played, In the past, Bronco Mendenhall didn't really do that. And Kalani Sitake is embracing the past. So that's really, it's just an interesting and fun little tidbit I wanted to throw your guys' way. Yeah, so we'll see what happens this summer into fall camp. But I don't anticipate there being very much news unless it's like completely blindsided, like, the past 2 seasons at BYU with their quarterbacks and receiver rooms. Anywho, let's move on to video game talk. And really, I just want to talk about one game that I found via YouTube in the recommended video sections. There's a couple of YouTubers out there that have played this game called SurrounDead. And I watched it. The one that I watched the most is by a YouTube channel by the name of Partially Royal. I wanted to make sure I get that shout out in there. And he played this game. And it is scratching an itch that I've had playing Arc Raiders and Marathon. Where I want to be able to go and loot and shoot and get better gear and either extract or get it back to a home base so that I don't lose it and that I can use it in future raids or future whatever, without the threat of another player coming in and cleaning my clock because I'm 35 years old. I'm not, 22 years old and taking Adderall. I never took Adderall in my life, but you get what I mean. And wanting to become the gamer. So it's scratching that itch for me. And it's a very, very fun game. Zombie survival game. So if you don't really like that type of genre, unfortunately the game's not for you. But if you could get past the zombie part, I'm not a big zombie apocalypse guy. I wasn't terribly into The Walking Dead when it was everywhere. I watched it. It was interesting. Until it turned into a human drama instead of surviving an apocalypse. And so, just this game is so much fun. It was originally made by one guy. He's since been able to expand his team because of the success of the game. But the game is like $20 on Steam. So you're not paying the $79 or $69.99 price label that these stupid AAA studios are forcing down our throats. So you get it on Steam for that much. It runs on Steam Deck. It also runs very fine, even on an older PC. You can change the difficulty of the game. So you can run where it's permadeath, where if you die, you get killed. That's it. You have to start over. Or you can respawn and be able to go and get the stuff that you lost when you died. And you can also change the loot sliders to where it's really hard to find good loot, or it's a little bit easier. This game is fantastic. I have something like 23 hours, I think, over the last 5 days in this game. I love it. It is fantastic. It's a good time, and you can pause it. So when your mom comes in and says, hey, can you pause your game? You can say yes, and you can go help. Instead of giving her a crazy look, like I had to, when I was a teenager going up through my 20s. And it's just a good time. I haven't had this much fun just playing a game in quite a while. In fact, it has taken over. I originally wanted to take this time to play through World of Warcraft's new expansion, Midnight, so I could talk to you all about it. But SurrounDead has kind of taken that over for me. So I just wanted to shout SurrounDead out. It's the only game this studio has made. Go look it up. Play it if it interests you. It's just a good time. But that's it for the show this week, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here, and I will see you next week when we spelunk back into the Matt Cave.